Well, again, the federal government has appealed to the labor unions to return to the negotiating table, citing concerns about the economic impact of the strike. This is coming after the unions rejected 60,000 naira proposed by the federal government. The government argues that the proposed minimum wage of 494,000, which the unions are demanding, would cost the government more than 9 trillion naira to cater for about 1.2 million workers, which is unsustainable. Well, what more do we need to know about this? What's the way forward? A lot of submissions have come up with regards to this. And now joining me live from our Abuja studios is my colleague, as the State House correspondent, Femi Akande. He joins us to look at another angle to this discussion. Femi, I really like to start with regards to meetings they've had before today, to address this issue. What really is the reaction now directly from the presidency or from the federal government? What are they saying at the moment with regards to this? Bring us up to speed with it.
Yes, so as we speak, we have breaking news coming from the federal government where they have reached out to Labour, inviting them back to the negotiating table. So we expect that meeting to hold later today, where Labour will return to that tripartite committee meeting with the federal government, organized private sector, and all stakeholders involved in working out a new national minimum wage for Nigeria. But we do not know also if at the end of today's meeting, the strike will be called off. But it's cheering news already that, the federal government has reached out to Labour to return to the negotiating table. We do not know now if the federal government will shift grounds or if indeed Labour will shift ground. But, one thing is clear, the federal government is also insisting that this strike embarked on by the Nigerian Labour Congress is in violation of a subsisting order from the National Industrial Court, restraining the organized labor from grounding economic activities in the country in the name of a strike. The Attorney General of the Federation sent out a letter to the Nigerian Labour Congress, where he also copied the secretaries to the government of the Federation, the Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, and also some top key government officials, bringing to their attention the fact that the NLC's strike is in violation of this court order by the National Industrial Court. So there's an issue of legality now about this strike. That is one thing. Another is how long will the NLC hold out, because what the feelers we're getting around, from key stakeholders is everyone wants the NLC to return to the negotiating table because they all agree that this strike is not in the interest of Nigerians. And even your guest that spoke earlier is saying that, this is a tripartite committee. The NLC is also part of that committee. And why is it that it's the NLC that appears to be holding everyone in that committee to ransom? We're not hearing from other members of the committee. The private sector is there. The state governors are also part of this committee, including the federal government. But it is the NLC now not putting into consideration what other state government, what the state government and the subnationals now, what they can afford, what the private sector can afford, but just coming up with his own stand and insisting that everyone must toe its line, and that's what a lot of people do not agree with at the moment. But well, the strike has taken effect, and we're already seeing signs of how economic activities, socioeconomic activities around the country have been grounded as a result of this strike. Everyone is hoping that, the NLC would reason with the federal government and reach a middle ground. Even on the political side, we have also seen a statement from the Labour Party urging the NLC to be realistic with its demands, asking them to return to the negotiating table. Everyone knows that there's a need for a new minimum wage in Nigeria. If you look at the inflation rate and all of that, 30,000 naira is no longer realistic. It's no longer a take-home pay. Everyone understands that there's a need to increase the national minimum wage. President Bola Tinubu's administration is saying that what they can afford at the moment is 100% increase, which is 60,000 naira, an increase from 30,000 naira. But NLC is insisting that they would accept nothing beyond 495,000, just that's close to 500,000, and that would be about 1,000 and more than 1,000% increase. And the federal government says that would have dire consequences on the economy, and that will be about 9.5 trillion naira annually for payment of salaries. That is, if they accept this new minimum wage by the NLC, which will be about 40% of the country's national budget. The federal government is saying that this is unrealistic. Well, hopefully with this new meeting now that have been called by the federal government, maybe Labour will be able to shift ground, and the federal government too may shift ground, and they will find a middle ground that will be in the interest of Nigerians, Tolu.
Well, indeed, I totally agree with you looking at that figures and what it even means for inflation and inclusive growth, because by the time, because it's a minimum wage, so that's going to be for the least worker, 500,000 naira at the moment. That's why 494,000 naira. Well, seems like so much on the high side. And I was even thinking close to 50, almost half or 40% of our budget if that happens. But Femi, in your movement today around town, what would you say about level of compliance? Because, before now, many almost at a point, some people in some quarters have talked about not believing so much in the movement of labor following what happened with the Naira scarcity and fuel scarcity and other issues we've had. But it seemed like something changed today. I don't know, you like to talk around that?
Well, for the Nigerian Labour Congress, the organized labor, as we have it, they also want to show that indeed they can back and bite, because what we have been seeing in the past has just been threats by the Nigerian Labour Congress, and they have not really come out to be decisive on any issue. Like you just mentioned, the Naira scarcity. There are other several issues that everyone expected the Nigerian Labour Congress to come out and speak for Nigerian workers. There are some policies of government also that everyone expected to hear from the Nigerian Labour Congress, but it appears it's only when it comes to the issue of national minimum wage that we'll see the Nigerian Labour Congress, up in arms against the federal government and against the government entirely. That's government at all levels. People are expecting them to do more. If you say you represent the interests of the Nigerian worker, it should be a total representation, not just when it has to do with the national minimum wage. People are expecting to see them in other fronts, also speaking and defending the right of the Nigerian workers. But for this particular strike, there has been a significant compliance, I must say, around the federal capital. Most banks are not open to business. Some petrol stations are shut. For some of those petrol stations, a lot of them were expecting to get products today, but that lifting of products have also been halted at major depots in the country. You spoke with Uloma Oyemachi earlier. We have seen the situation at the country's airport where flights have been grounded. There's total chaos now at Nigerian airports, and it's all of this will take a couple of days for the country to recover from, for the airlines to start rescheduling passengers and ensure that they are now taking their flights, or their connecting flights are now provided. It's going to take time for those petrol stations now that do not have products, because they cannot get access to it because of the restriction of lifting of products at major depots. It will also take a couple of days for these products to arrive from major depots in Lagos up north. So this hardship will still continue for a while. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that even if NLC decides to call off the strike today, the impact will still be felt for a couple of days. So that's what people are saying. It's at a time when people are already groaning under tough economic conditions, and the country is also still trying to recover after the removal of fuel subsidy and all of that. And then this comes from the Nigerian Labour Congress. So some people have said it's quite insensitive that they expect labor to feel the pulse of the citizens, of workers that they claim to protect, because this strike is actually not in the interest of the workers, that they can still be at that negotiating table, continuing with holding talks with the federal government, and ensuring that they get something good for the Nigerian worker, that this strike called by them is actually not the way to go, because the people who will bear the brunt the most are these workers that the NLC claim to be fighting for. Tolu.
I must thank you so much, my colleague there live for us from Abuja. Well, let's see what happens with regards to the meeting. And of course, I know you'll be bringing us up to speed with that later today. Thank you so much Do have a productive week.